guys, I'm finally ready to release my auto rayven kit. I know it's been a long time and I've been developing this thing for about a year now, but it's finally ready. So the reason I had to change it and readapt it was I redesigned it to work with these guys. So you now have the ability to put in any motor you want to play around with that, and you're not going to have a problem with torque. So I'm just going to say a few things about the kit, and then after this I'm going to have an installation guide if you want to stick around and watch that. Okay, so if you buy this kit, what you're going to get is a few 3D printed pieces. You're going to get the pusher arm, you're going to get a spring spacer, a support piece for the pushing arm, a gear, and this piece that holds the gearbox in place. You're then also going to get the gearbox itself and a higher current micro switch, and those are all the things there. Okay, and to get some of the questions out of the way quickly, yes, this is finally finished. Yes, it is available right now on my Etsy store, and yes, there is going to be a lot of stock. I know I haven't had a lot of time to print things recently because I'm studying engineering all the time, but I've reached out to a company to print these for me. So I do have 100 sets of these currently. And I'm ordering some more gearboxes, so that shouldn't be a problem. Another thing is, if you're going to buy this kit, you will have to do some soldering, so you should at least be able to do a kind of moderately difficult mod. And just, you can put what battery you want in this, but if you're going to make a full auto blaster and you don't want it to lose RPM on the flywheel motors and everything and actually shoot fast, then I would advise going with a lipo powered blaster for a full auto kit. Okay, with all that out of the way, if you want to stick around now, I'm going to go through the full install guide. I realise this is going quite slowly through it, and some of you guys will get the point pretty quickly, but I just wanted to make this as clear as possible so everyone can understand. So here we go. Okay, so I've got a completely new rayven I just bought off someone. I think the locks are removed, but it's essentially stock. Have pieces, the gearbox, and the switch. So let's get started. Because you'll probably need to swap out your motors anyways, and yeah, while I'm rewiring for micro switches, I'm just going to cut all of this out. Okay, so the first part we're going to do is install the pusher arm. Because there are actually two different sizes of pusher arm, and this one takes a smaller one, so that's what I'm going to use. Just going to unscrew this plate here. There we go. Right, so I'm going to take this orange piece off of the bar because we don't need that anymore. Taking the spring off. Oh, no. Oh, yeah. It kind of has a strange way of hooking on back here. There we go. And I will take the spring off. There we go. So your new piece will just slot in very simply, but first I'm going to snip this wire a bit short because as this moves forwards and backwards with the pusher arm, I don't want this end sort of just flinging around in here and maybe hitting something. So I cut it so that it's just long enough to go past this ridge here, because if it was too far back then it might come back and hit it. So I think I cut it about 188 millimeters long. 188. Yeah. So I'll do that now. Right, I got it back. So we're going to take our pusher arm, and it has a slot in the bottom, just like the original, where you can just plonk this straight in. So next thing, I'm going to take my spring again, put that back on. Now, when this mechanism is in development, sometimes the spring wouldn't be strong enough to push it all the way back and keep it there. It would go back and then sort of judder forwards a bit, and we can't have any of that. So we also have the spring spacer. Now you can see this hole is in a specific area here. We want to orientate this so that this hole here is closest to which way? This way. This hole is closest to the top of the shell and the right of the shell. So it's like this, and it's going to go in just like that. So I'm going to plonk that on here, and then just place this back in. And there we go. So check that this can move freely back and forwards. It should not get stuck at all, but if it does happen to get stuck for some reason, sand it before you try and put the motor onto it or anything. Just make sure that this moves freely. So yep, you can just put this orange plate back on now. And again, this should just move freely back and forwards, which it does. Very good. Okay, next is to put in the support piece for the pusher arm. Because the gear is pushing down on the pusher arm like this, it's possible that it's essentially trying to bend it in that direction. So I have this small piece here which just sits in the shell to give it a bit of support to ride on. So we have these two little prongs here, and these help you to locate it correctly, and it's just going to go on this orange part that sticks up just like this. And it should just sit there square and in line with everything else. So I'd put it in so you understand where it goes, and the pusher arm goes over it like this. But then this should be stuck in with a dab of super glue or hot glue if you're feeling more cautious. So just going to rough up this surface a little bit. Got super glue, got a dab. Again, put it in just so that you are confident that the pusher arm is riding over it correctly. And then just put a dab of super glue down. Oh, a bit too much. Okay. There we go. That's in the right position. And I'm just pressing it down, make sure it's on there. And the super glue is probably already dried. Brilliant. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to put in the piece that holds the gearbox. So you have your gearbox here, and this piece, which will essentially slot into the shell in this fashion. this hole here essentially goes on the first screw post here, like this. You might have to wiggle it just to get it past this orange piece here, but then as you can see it goes in, and I've left this part here so that you can take your screw that was in this lock and use it just to secure this in place. It doesn't have to be tight, just enough so that it's not going to fall out. But first, your gearbox. So your gearbox is going to sit, you have a little post here which goes into the hole in your gearbox, so you know you've got it in the right place, and you just push that down, and that's it. That's how it sits. Now a few things about this gearbox. You can put it in either way theoretically, but I decided halfway through that it's easier to glue it in this way, because then you can see the screws in case you need to do anything to your gearbox. You can still open it. The first thing though, I'm just going to cut off this plastic part here that holds this motor in, because realistically, you know, put a better motor in this if you want. You can use this motor on 2S and still get good darts per second, but if you really want to go crazy, well, I put an MTB Rhino in it and get 9.6 darts per second. I'm sure you could put, well, just experiment with other motors with higher RPMs and see what you can do. So I've cut that off, and I want to put it in like this. So these little tabs at the front here, you also want to just snip those off because they're not necessary and they just get in the way. Oh, there we go. So those are cut off. And the thing about putting it this way up means that this, oh, I hope that you can see this. This little nub here is now there, which isn't there on the other side. So if you were to take your gear and put it on, it would just hit this nub. So all you have to do, if you want to put it on this way, you can just put it on the other way, is I take a file or a small saw and I just file this back just enough so that when I put the gear on, it's not going to hit it when it turns around. So I'll do that now. Okay, so I've done that, and now if I'm to take my gear and just plonk it on the top, it's a good friction fit. There we go. You can now just see that this isn't going to clash with that when it turns around. It's got a little bit of clearance. That's all I'm talking about. So the next step is to take this, and well, you don't need the gear on it right now. Oh, if I can get it off. There we go. And glue it into here. So again, with gluing, scratch up the surface just a bit and scratch up the bottom of your gearbox just a bit so that the glue bonds well. Just putting just a bit of glue on, doesn't have to be too much because super glue is strong. And yep, pop that in and just pressing it down. And that's all good. Make sure when you press it down that it is pressed right up against the wall there. Okay, so another part on this is where the switch goes for cycle control. So again, you also get a switch in here, and this essentially just plonks on right there, just like that. That's how that's going to go. So if you were now to put this in, you can see that that switch sits underneath this arm. which presses it down. Okay, so now we're at the point where you're gonna want to rewire your blaster, put all the switches in the right configuration, and I have a diagram to show you to help you with that. And yeah, if you're gonna put new motors in and all that, we're gonna do that now. It's easier to do that before you actually take your switch and stick it in, just so that you can have access to the tabs with the soldering iron. So this is the diagram that I've drawn up for you. One is without motor braking, one is with motor braking. And yes, this might look familiar. It's adapted from Taruk Makto's diagram for a rapid strike, essentially. And I'm back and I've finished the wiring. Just got my two switches here and some rhinos in here, but that's all personal choice and everything. Over here we can see I have the switch in place with all the wires. So now I'm just going to pop it on. Oh, and remember, at this point you do now have this top part of the switch here. So if you try and just force it on, it's going to hit the arm. So just make sure that you hold that down while you push it in so that it goes underneath the arm. So a little wiggle. And that should be in. Cool. There we go. And so where is my screw? Oh, here it is. So I'm just gonna taking the old screw that's holding the lock in. I'm just gonna pop that in. This does not need to be super tight. It's just enough to hold it in. So just go until I get a bit of resistance. I've wired it up to a LiPo there. If you can see that in the battery tray, because again, if you're doing a full auto blaster, you pretty much should go with LiPo power. Alright, let's close it up and see how it works. Awesome. Okay, I don't have a 2S LiPo on me right now that would fit in the tray, but I have this one for another project. So I'm just going to pop this in and show you how it works. Had to get my mag. Right, I'll just hold it like that. But first of all, so I'm just going to hold down the trigger and there we go. Awesome. Yeah, this is also the motor that comes with the gearbox, so I'm not sure how the 3S LiPo is, if that's destroying that or not, but it seems to be alright. Give it a little rev. Yeah, alright, so let's see this thing firing. I just have 14 darts in here at the moment. And I'll just shoot there, I guess. Yes, nice. Okay, so something I love about this mod is that as long as you have a LiPo that can fit in your battery tray, or you scrape it out, there's no other marking on this or anything that will let people know you have a full auto kit. This would count as a full sleeper mod, which is pretty awesome. But I want to show you the one that I made originally for me, because I took advantage of the fact that you no longer have the mechanical pushing mechanism in here, which actually frees up this space right here, and you can just about fit in a 3S LiPo in there without anyone seeing it. So I'll show you mine. Right, so this is my personal one. It's the exact same kit inside, just the bit more of a dodgy soldering job. so don't look at that. I'm just going to quickly fire it. The only difference is I have a Rhino in the pusher motor, and someone else put some Hellcats in here for me. Again, not a full mag, because I can't find all my darts. Nice. And this one does not have motor braking. But let's pop this open and show you where I put the battery. And here we go. You can see I have a 3S LiPo tucked just underneath here. And yeah, I'll try and take the motors out. This is a little dirty, this one, because I've been using it a lot. Take that out there. You can see that the LiPo fits here, and I just have the wires going underneath the motor cage, and then into the battery tray there. And so this can just slide out, just fits in there. I did have to grind down with a Dremel in here just a bit, and there's a small hole here, but I think you can not even barely see that when you're actually running around in the game. And I did get a balance lead extender to plug onto this thing, so that I can charge it without having to actually take the battery out, because that's annoying.